Yeah, so why don't you start by telling us what you do in a nutshell and how you're using AI?
Yeah, so my name is Penn. I run Stack Optimise with my brother Felix. We've been going for just over a year and a half now, and we work with B2B companies to generate leads for them through deploying these very personalized AI-powered outreach campaigns, predominantly through email, but also LinkedIn. And we work with a whole range of B2B companies of all shapes and sizes, from SaaS companies, online service-based companies, coaching, training, consultancies, marketing agencies, recruitment agencies, all sorts. The only condition is that they have a big enough total addressable market, because to get ROI from cold outreach, you need volume. And that's it in a nutshell. We both have backgrounds in B2B sales. So yeah, just under 2 years ago, we decided to join forces and go all in on helping companies grow, but particularly through leveraging the latest tools and AI to do so.
Yeah. And total addressable market, just for those who aren't familiar with this buzzword, total addressable market is basically just, if I'm right, it's basically the total number of people that you're able to reach.
Yeah.
So if you're selling like a glass, then most people are going to need a glass at some point, right? So your total addressable market is pretty much going to be the whole world. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just the total
Yeah.
number of people that can buy your product,
Yeah.
and it is dependent on various factors: geography, the industry you target, the specific role, right? And yeah, lots of different components. It's quite a comprehensive criteria.
Yeah.
Something that we will suss out with every client that we work with.
Yeah.
But yourself, Harry, tell me a little bit more about you and what you're up to.
Yeah, I am an AI consultant. So my business is AI to the world. So we help businesses implement and understand AI in their systems, largely targeting bigger companies with over 100 employees. So very much about AI education and also about AI implementation as well. But just hugely passionate. I used to be a journalist, so I wrote for the Guardian and the Independent and quite a lot of national newspapers, and then I sort of pivoted into writing about tech, and then really from there I got into this AI space. Went on a little bit of a detour to SEO, but I've really spent the last 2.5 years learning all about AI and understanding what this technology is and the potential to transform businesses.
And I love that you take a very holistic approach to it. Whereas we're honing in on sales and
Yeah.
marketing, you're mapping out the entire processes of a business and understanding where you can embed AI into their entire operations.
Yeah, and ultimately it is a huge operation, but it's a huge technology. And I think for anyone that feels overwhelmed by it, it can be really handy to have someone who's just there as a consultant, whether that's on a small level to consult on what tech stack to use, so you're not having to spend that time, or like you said, just keep moving from tool to tool. But right up to actually building out bespoke tools and bespoke systems to help the business, work more effectively. Ultimately, every business is going to have to go through this transformation at some point. And no doubt we'll be here again in a few years' time when quantum computers come out and we start talking about
Is that the next big
that.
thing,
That's
is
going to
it?
be the next big thing. So yeah, you heard it here first. But yeah, so I understand how much of a big issue and a big, yeah, it's both a big opportunity, I think, for businesses to really excel and save time and to make every employee more efficient. But also, I think it is. I know how overwhelming it can be, and I know that there's so much about it at the moment in the media that seems very negative and very alarmist. That it's nice to have somebody who's there as your guide and your support to help you understand it.
What inspired us to launch our business is we spoke to a load of
Yeah.
sales leaders and early stage founders, specifically focusing on their sales process. And it became immediately apparent that there was a massive asymmetry between the value they were getting from their current tech stack and the tools they were using, and the value they could be getting with all these new tools like Clay and AI emerging. And that's what gave us the idea to just start posting content about this stuff, not necessarily build a business. Our first 2 or 3 months, we were just posting content about all these new tools. without a product, without a service, but naturally people started approaching us, inquiring about what services we offer. So there's an element of just winging it and being as reactive as you are proactive
Uh,
as well.
I have a question for you. So,
Okay.
how do you? There's this huge like tech stack. You know, everybody's posting that you need these like 1,000 tools, and it's just like how do you like a lot of those are going to be wrappers, right? They're going to be
Mm.
things where you've just got like basic AI in the background, like Claude or GPT, and then slightly sort of put a little bit of coding, a little bit of a UX over the top of it. Like, how do you figure out which ones are valuable and which ones are just really, it's just like a SaaS subscription that the business doesn't need?
Yeah, I think first off, review all their social proof and their testimonials and ensure they're legit. A lot of businesses now just slap big logos on their website and you can't even click into them, right? There's no context, there's no detail. That's why on our website, I don't know if you've seen, but we've got a whole new case study page where we have individual pages devoted to each client that we've worked with, and we've comprehensively outlined how we worked with them, the strategy, the templates, the results, video testimonials. So they're really kind of substantial. So that's the first thing I'd look for is ensure that the tool's been validated by the market. And I mean, there's a number of different components, right? Depends on your needs. What I would just say is there's thousands of tools now, and there's new ones emerging every day. And I think what that creates is a lot of paralysis analysis, right? Where you have this kind of paradox of choice going on, where like people think they want optionality, they want lots of choice, but actually they don't, because it creates that anxiety post purchase, right? It creates that buyer remorse where you're questioning whether what you bought was correct because there's so many different options that you could have gone for. And that can cause you to just be passive and not actually do anything about it and stick to the status quo, or constantly update your tech stack, which is never a good thing because that's disruptive for your processes, for your team. It's like a lot of these tools are interchangeable. And so just commit to what you have invested in. If after a year it's not working out, then reconsider. This is a little bit of a digressive point, but I read the other day that 50% of B2B companies terminate their contracts with their SaaS provider after a year, which is pretty insane, right? Um, but yeah, it's a good question. Obviously, the criteria for what works for you is so subjective. Um, I would generally go for market leading tools as well, just because of their APIs and their integrations, which makes life a lot easier. They have a serious competitive advantage there, where tools like HubSpot and Clay and Notion and all these platforms have such easy
Yeah, and I
integrations.
think I think two things. I think first of all that speaks to the value of a consultant. I think consultants get a bad rap, but as a consultant, the value that you're bringing is making those decisions for the business and having a bird's eye view, and that obviously takes time and understanding, and then the obviously the implementation and the training as well on which tool works and
Mm,
which tool you recommend. And secondly, I think the stat about 50%, I think speaks so much to the idea that this is the quote unquote end of SaaS.
mm,
Um, that increasingly we're going to see um, bespoke solutions, so a business can get like exactly what they want. And already on the market, you see a mix of some tools that are bespoke and some tools that are have a general value.
yeah, we discussed this before
Yeah.
that the SaaS platforms that win in the future will be the ones that enable you to spin up your own SaaS products, right? Like you'll be able to just use natural language to generate a SaaS platform. I think you already can. You can do it with websites, right? And so building your own SaaS is a risky play. It's something that we considered about 8 to 10 months ago. We had various ideas for like micro SaaS tools. One, it was a bit of a distraction, but two, it just seems a bit of a risky move given the ease at which it is to build a SaaS product today. Things like the rate of innovation, the level of competition, it's just something I don't think you want to delve into unless you have a groundbreaking idea like Clay, of course.
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of truth to that. I think unless you have something that's very complicated. Well, I mean, I do think. and you will speak to this, I'm sure, that the value is in personal brand. That I'm sure you've heard people from Silicon Valley say this. Personal brand is the new moat. I'm sure I've told you this story before
Go on, hit
about
me.
the founders in Silicon Valley who raise a bunch of
Yes.
VC money for a product, knowing that it's probably going to fail or that it's probably going to be taken out. And then rather than spending all that money on, actually building it out, they coast and spend most of the money on building their personal brand. And then when
Genius.
inevitably it runs out, ghostwriter, videographer, everything you want in a studio like this.
Yeah.
They can't take that away from someone. It's not like if the business closes down and it loses all the funding that they're going to lose their brand.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I think that was a bit of a trend, wasn't it?
Yeah.
A few years ago, people just raising a shit ton of money and investing all that capital into
Good for
building the brand.
ghostwriting. If you had a ghostwriting
Yeah,
business
true.
or a video
True.
editing business, yeah.
Yeah, I suspect there have been cases where those stories have hit the mainstream, and as a result, their personal brand has been totally shattered because of how unethical that is, right?
Sure, yeah.
So it's kind of backfired, which I hope it has, because it's a bit of a dick move, right?
I know,
It's stealing
right,
someone's
yeah.
money. It's just invest in your own growth, not the business that they've invested in. But yeah, personal brand is super important. Also, I guess we're kind of just rolling with this now, aren't we?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you just roll with it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's one of the big factors, I think, for our growth as a business, is we went all in on our personal brand from the outset. And the conventional wisdom, I think, if you follow people like Alex or Mosey, is that you should spend your first few years just building up your craft, building up your expertise, and then impart your wisdom with the world. And there's obviously merit and logic to that approach. We were just super bullish on going all in on it from the outset, on the basis that we're a lead generation agency. There's thousands of agencies like us using the same tools, the same data, the same workflows. We're a commoditized, interchangeable service. And so one of the key ways in which you can differentiate is through your brand, whether that's your personal or company brand. And on top of that, your brand just compounds, right? Where every single piece of content, every comment, every connection just builds on the last. So that's why we went all in on it from the get-go. And just after a few months of posting every day on LinkedIn, sharing valuable content about how to leverage tools to drive B2B leads, we started to generate inbound leads. And I would argue that every single deal we've closed has been meaningfully influenced by our personal brand. Whether it's to generate the lead, i.e. they come across our content and reach out to us, or to nurture and close a lead, i.e. we reach out to the business, and at some point in the sales cycle, either organically or like intentionally, they come across our LinkedIn content, our profile. We often try and guide them to it. They see the following, the engagement, the level of insight in the content, and that builds trust, authority, pushes them down the pipeline.
You're obviously you're in the cold email space. You're doing all the clay and basically sending cold emails that are personalized with AI. A lot has been said about how this is the lead generation. I think not enough is said about like that is one channel, and how you also have to have a personal brand. You also have to be understand the sales cycle and the value of building a relationship, and that I think you said this before, that people tend to send a really good cold email, they get some interest, and then they're like, bam, 5 paragraph pitch slap, and then suddenly they've alienated the prospect, and they don't understand the value of the relationship. That actually all these things are what drives sales and what ultimately closes the deal.
Yeah, for sure. I see it all the time, having worked in sales for 7 years and then working with companies to generate leads and getting exposure to their sales process, is sales organizations or sales professionals tend to front load their effort in the sales cycle. So they'll invest all their effort or a lot of their effort into that initial cold outreach message. They'll make it super personalized. And as soon as they generate that positive reply, they assume the job is done, and we revert to just providing a very generic, standardized buyer experience where we ditch the personalization in our follow-up touch points, in our sales meetings. And as a result, we lose momentum, we lose those opportunities. So what I try and encourage our clients when we generate the lead for them is to ensure that every single touch point is of the utmost quality. You're personalizing every single every single message, every single time your buyer shares some interesting information about them, whether it's about the deal at hand or whether it's something personal, the football team they support, what they're doing at the weekend, have the antenna to register that information, document it, and allude to it in subsequent communication. That's how you're really going to build trust. That's how you're going to get them to really lean in and cooperate with your buyer, with the sales journey.
Yeah, I love that.
Um, hmm. Yeah. But I wanted to ask you about personal brand as well, because I know it's something that you've invested in more so, I think, over the last year. What's been your approach to doing that, and how has it paid off for you so far?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. So the one thing that I have learned is that it is, as you said, about providing the value. Um, so providing genuine insights into how you actually do things. Like I shared a lead magnet last week, I think, about the MCP, the Model Context Protocol. I will
I keep
explain
hearing about this.
I will
Please do.
explain what that is, and we'll have to have a whole segment on what it is. And about essentially, these are the servers for cold email that you can use. So these are the tools that you can essentially link to Claude, and this is this is how you implement it. You need to know a tiny bit of coding, and so that I thought was obviously really valuable for people who are like you in that space, to have a clear set of instructions about how to actually implement it. And I put together a whole Google Doc on how to do that. And so that got, a lot of comments and a lot of follows. And so, things like that I think are uh, interesting and important. I think a lot of people lean too much into the thought leadership. And I think that comes back to maybe what you were saying about like trust, and like what Alex Hormozy said, like you like thought leadership comes from when you've got all this experience and sort of people know you. It's kind of like if you're a 19-year-old who hasn't yet done anything, and then you're posting about how to grow on social media and you're only getting one or two likes. It's sort of jarring in a
Mm,
way. So I think, yeah, that's definitely something I've learned. And two, I also think the value of relationships as well. So, the same people comment on your posts, and so that's always nice. So you can build that relationship with people in the
reciprocate.
when you're messaging people. And then
Mm,
also like thinking outside the box as well. So I think you and I both have experimented with these sort of AI images where we've cloned
mm.
ourselves using Laura, and making videos that always spark some
I
conversation.
enjoyed your one the other day. You're good
What's
at combining the actual audio with the video. I haven't quite cracked that technique
yeah,
yet.
yeah. There is a secret to doing that. You could sort of do the lip syncing. There's like another tool that lets you
Yes.
put some audio in and then sync up
Do you do that
the
natively in the video editing platform, whether it's
No, you have
Kling
to use a
or...
separate tool. So
Ah,
there's like a whole workflow of
cool.
putting it all together. So yeah, I think it's just called lip sync or something like that. So
Yeah, we
yeah,
built a workflow recently
yeah,
to send personalized voice notes to prospects via WhatsApp when they respond positively to a cold email campaign. So we deploy a cold email campaign, buyer responds positively, we then send them an automated AI generated voice note based on our voice, it's trained on our voice via WhatsApp.
that's pretty cool. Are you using 11 Labs for that?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Yeah, it's awesome. Like AI is so cool. Like there's so many things that you can do with it now. And if you're really in the space, you just can't help but feel so excited by it. It's when I speak to people that are perhaps a little ignorant, where the conversation is a little more gloomy and negative. And, because all you're going off is how you're programmed through the Western mainstream, which is like dystopian films and all this alarmism that's pushed through the mainstream media. And so naturally, you're very skeptical of AI. But it's once you actually dip your toe in and you get immersed in AI and actually using it firsthand, do you really appreciate its capabilities?
Yeah, I really think the media has not done a great job of, and the industry itself has not done a great job of PR. They've, as you said, they've allowed all this alarmism to go on, where people are scared that it's sort of going
Mm.
to take all of their jobs. And of course, it's just not true. I mean, it's ultimately just a prediction machine at the
Mm.
end of the day. So, yeah.
Yeah, right now it's the ultimate tool. Like people describe it as this force multiplier, allows you to do so much more with less. And right now it's a supplement, it's not a substitute. I do wonder whether we'll reach that convergence point where it threatens to actually replace salespeople in the context of B2B sales and marketing. I feel that particularly with high investment solutions, buyers will always want to speak to real people. I think it'll take a while to build up that trust, and vice versa. If I'm running a business, I want to ensure that I'm providing my service to good people and good businesses as well, right? And so, and by the point that, and when we get to the point where buyers actually trust AI sellers, we'll probably have AI buyers as well. So it'll be AI buyers engaging with AI sellers. And that is already taking place on a kind of micro level with email, right? We're getting AI crafting the emails, and then we have AI in the spam filters trying to block those emails from getting seen.
Right.
And what we have as the seller is leverage because we're the ones proactively devising the strategies to beat the filter. It's on them to catch on to these strategies and react and adapt, right? So we can always keep one step ahead. So we have the upper ground. You've got to take full advantage of that.
Yeah. On that, I wonder whether you think that framing it in that way, like AI versus AI, uh, it's sort of it's like, how can I say this to you? You are still having to put quite a lot of, like, I've seen the amount of effort, the amount of time that you guys put into these email workflows. It's not as if it's done automatically, right? You have to think about where to do the research. You still have to do the thinking in terms of the prospect. You have to segment the list effectively so that when the email does come in, it's unique. It's been got proper research in it, and so. Yeah, I wonder whether we're not really at a level yet where AI versus AI. What's happening is it's just becoming more sophisticated, and what people are expecting of a cold email is changing, and so the players like you are having to adapt and make your emails more sophisticated.
Yeah, for sure. And that's one of the most important principles in outreach copywriting is this idea of pattern disruptors, right? And it's the principle that predicates our entire ebooks. We've got our ebook on uh, outreach templates, our most effective outreach templates, and the principle that kind of permeates throughout the entire book is that your copy needs to be disruptive. It needs to stand out. That is what the idea of the pattern disruptor is. It's using language, using phrases that stands out, right? Because as soon as your message resembles every other sales message out there, then it's just going to get forgotten. It's going to get discarded. It's not even going to get read. So you need to get creative. It definitely requires some creativity, and you've got to be constantly iterating. We've had cases where a strategy has worked super well, and after a few months, the results have plummeted because you get what's called a copy fatigue, right? Where that message becomes saturated, it becomes overused, it becomes too familiar to your buyers, and it no longer grabs the same attention as it used to. So when you're in this space, you can't ever rest on your laurels. If a strategy is working well for a client, you've got to be constantly monitoring it and ready to adapt when you need to.
Why do you think copy fatigue happens? Do you think that happens because that email is sent around to so many departments, people instinctively talk about it? So if you're running a campaign just you yourself and you're sending, let's say, 100,000 emails a month, then so many people have received that message that it's sort of talked about and in the zeitgeist? Or do you think it's to do with maybe people sharing their copy? Do you think it's like a trend in the industry that the people start using one message and see it's working, and then all the other players in the space sort of jump on that? Why do you think copy fatigue exists?
I think it just exists because as soon as you start sending out an email that works well, people will catch on to it. They'll employ it themselves. We're pretty transparent with all our effective strategies as well. And as soon as you start targeting a buyer with a message that they've already received, they become desensitized to it. They become a little numb to it. So it loses its potency. and it's no longer a pattern disruptor. It's no longer something that stands out because it's something they've received, repeatedly. So that's why you've got to constantly innovate. I had a case where I crafted an entirely new strategy. I don't know if I shared it with you, but it was this idea of what I call storytelling, where it totally deviates from the conventional way to craft an email, where you quite poetically describe a scenario where the buyer is using your solutions, implemented your solution, and is garnering all the results from it. And you make it a little lighthearted. So it'd be like, Harry, picture this. It's 9 a.m. in Canggu in Bali. You've just woken up. You've just gone into B work to crack on with your day. And all of a sudden your inbox is pinging with messages from founders that want your services to implement, AI solutions, right? So it's that kind of angle. It's a little playful. And we posted about the strategy because it worked really well. And the next day, I had someone email me pitching their services, adopting that strategy.
That's crazy.
Right?
You think they saw your post on
For
LinkedIn?
sure. It was a carbon copy in terms of the actual template.
Yeah.
And this is something that we had originally created.
That's crazy.
So that's just to demonstrate how quickly these strategies can circulate around and become saturated.
Yeah. So it's funny what we were just talking about. I feel like the algorithm has obviously been listening to me because it's just come up on LinkedIn with this post. It says, we'll put this up on the screen so people can see it. It says, I do not even look at 95% of the cold emails I get. Immediately delete. Here's a selection of bad subject lines from the last month. Question for Patrick. Buyer intent for his company. Company XYB. Idea on B2B selling for company. Company's window of opportunity. Cold email announcement from company. Salesperson at company. All of them are hi Patrick, using tools and techniques for sales optimization, something we need to share with you. So he says, I only got one good subject line in the hundreds of cold emails he got over the course of a month.
Did he specify what that one good subject line was?
He said, let's have a look. He says, learning initiative. There are elementary rules for subject lines that have been proven by evaluating millions of cold emails, using 1 or 2 words, a maximum of 4. Do not use my name or the company's name in the subject line. But I think what's interesting about what he's saying, and he doesn't specify, by the way, what he said he uses subject lines such as personalized learning, feedback, greetings from Thomas, and then puts in brackets a referral. So he's talking about emails that he uses. But what I think is interesting is that all of those lines are if you go back 2 years, maybe even 18 months, they probably would have worked. Mentioning the company in the question for this person to get someone's attention. Now they don't, because so many people have used them, and even when I see them, I cringe. I think.
Yeah. I think the purpose of the subject line, right, is to get your email open, but to also maintain positive sentiment, right? So you could use a really compelling subject line that drives open rates, but it has no relevance to the actual email body, and that's going to erode trust, right? So you want to ensure that the email hooks people in, but it also concerns the email body itself, because when there's disconnect there, you erode trust. Our approach to subject lines is twofold. There's generally 2 approaches. The one is the first approach is to just make the subject line resemble an email that they might receive from someone internally, from a colleague, something very basic like Harry this morning, or strategy session, or quick idea. That's become quite saturated. So you've got to just still be granular. You've got to really hone in on the language you use to make the email seem like it's internal. Again, without being too deceitful or deceptive with your language, but also using words that people aren't using. So the classic ones are like quick idea.
How many times you open an email like that?
Yeah, exactly.
It's not going to be a quick idea, is it? It's gonna take you 5 or 6 paragraphs to explain it.
Yeah. It's a little bit deceptive, that one. And then the other strategy is taking a radically different approach, where you are deliberately being very you're really exaggerating your claim, right? Because what you absolutely should not do is sell in your subject line, like Harry, 10x your sales pipeline, right? You're not going to open that email. But what you can do is go one step further and lightheartedly exaggerate the value of your service, right? So an example of doing that is doing Harry and then placeholder where you would insert someone in your space that is like the king of your space. So like Harry, the next, Eric Nowoslawski or Alex Hormozy, for example, right? And it's obviously playful.
Yeah, Eric Nowilowski, for people who are watching on my channel, the Robots Are Coming, is one of the sort of OGs of this space of using AI for cold email and using tools like using Clay. I think he was in this space very early. So
Yeah, he's
yeah,
super early
yeah,
adopter.
yeah,
So yeah, that's the other approach you can take. Another one that works well for us is just referencing a competitor. So it'd be like Stack Optimise Cold IQ in the subject line if you were targeting us. That's going to pique curiosity. You
yeah.
just need to ensure that there is relevance to the actual email body. But yeah, going back to your point, it's just another thing that you've got to constantly innovate and test and A/B test. And what people also underestimate is that the preview text is arguably just as important as the subject line, right? Because in your inbox, you can see the subject line and then the preview text, i.e. the first sentence of the email. So you need to really front load your email with the personalizations because they're going to see that too, and that's going to dictate whether they open your email. So even if your opening line is a relevant personalized hook, try and actually incorporate the personalized elements at the start of that sentence so that it's immediately visible.
That's a very good segue into the next thing that I want to ask you about, which is that Superhuman. So Superhuman is a really amazing email tool for your inbound emails, let's say your everyday emails, not for doing the kind of cold outreach that you do, for organizing your emails with AI. Just announced a new feature
I
where they're
saw this.
summarizing um, those opening lines that you talked about. So even if you write them really, really well, an AI will go and summarize them for the reader, so that when you receive them, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I stumbled across this the other day.
Yeah,
So I've never used Superhuman. So just to clarify, what they've
sure.
just deployed is a feature that summarizes the whole email.
The Yes, I think that they will summarize the whole email, um, so that essentially those few lines that you were talking about, not the subject line, will probably include that as well. And you obviously you have to turn it on if that's what you want. And also when you go into Superhuman, I do use Superhuman at the top. Um, it tells you, in one sentence what this email is about. It says blah blah's, asking about this, or blah blah wants to know this information. But increasingly we're seeing that even before you open the email, that's going to be delivered to you rather than what the recipient has actually written.
Ah, interesting. I've not given this much thought,
Yeah.
but it's inevitable that all email account providers, whether it's Gmail, Outlook, Superhuman. I mean, Superhuman's like an add-on to Gmail, something you
Yeah, so
install into
Superhuman
Super.
will just explain what it is
Yeah, sure.
for the viewer and for you. Yeah, Superhuman is an AI tool, and yeah, you log in with your Gmail.
Okay.
It's has a number of features in it, which until about a week ago were pretty unique, which were that you could just press a button and it would respond to your emails for you and draft a reply in your voice, because it would be learning from your voice the whole time. And it used AI to essentially be able to categorize your emails for you. So if you got an email that was like a sales email, it would just immediately go in a folder that says sales. And if you had an email that was like a receipt, it would just be parked in your receipt
Hmm.
folder. So yeah, it's got a number of features in. One of them is another one is like a snippet, so you can just press slash and press a button, and then you can send essentially a templated response. So if you have a customer that's asking about a particular problem, you just put that in there, and you can even include like PDFs and attachments and stuff as well. So
Hmm.
really, really amazing tool. Notion have actually just brought out a mail tool that basically does all
Ah,
of those features and is free. So it kind of killed off Superhuman. Yeah.
oh God.
Um, but yeah, that's essentially what it does. And so you see that for high profile business executives who are getting literally hundreds to hundreds. I think there's a journalist at the BBC, the technology editor at the BBC, was saying how she gets, over 4,000 emails a day. It is impossible to deal with that kind of volume of emails if you're in a high profile position without an AI assisting you and categorizing them. And so this is the way I think that the emails are going to go. So I just wondered what your taking it is and how you kind of deal with that.
Yeah. So at the moment on Gmail, you already have the default categories. I think it's your inbox, then social, promotion. I think there's
Right,
one more. And your emails are automatically analyzed and categorized accordingly. And at this point in time, I don't think there's much personalization, but inevitably these tools are going to come along, like Notion's Emailbox and Superhuman, where they provide you with the customization for how you categorize the emails. So inevitably, you will have the option to automatically categorize all sales and marketing emails into like a spam folder or in a sales folder, which will probably reduce their visibility or the open rates of those emails. It's going to make our life a little harder. I do suspect that there will be like AI agents that are so embedded in your business that they actually understand what services you need at this point in time and can therefore improve the visibility of outreach that is selling solutions that you actually need right now. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, that makes perfect
This
sense.
is just my theory.
So essentially, I feel like what you're saying is it's going to separate the wheat from the chaff in the cold email space.
Exactly.
So that all these sort of junk emails that are not relevant will, like I imagine if you received a cold email, trying to pitch you cold email services, that's like, because, so you might receive an email. So one of the bad cold email techniques is you might have used a service that allows you to see when Penn has liked a particular post on LinkedIn, and then they will sort of reference that in the email. So it might be, hey, I saw you liked Eric Nowalowski's post on cold email. I saw you follow Clay on LinkedIn. So how about, cold email services? And of course, it's a really bad email because you've misinterpreted that signal, essentially. You've misinterpreted the fact that you're liking that post for an interesting cold email rather than you being in that space and offering it as a service. So we'd say that's a bad cold email. So you think in the future maybe those kinds of emails will just be automatically shifted out because your AI will know that you are a lead generation sort of cold email provider, so you wouldn't need that service yourself.
Yeah, exactly. That's how I see it going. You'll have AI that's so embedded in your business that it filters out irrelevant emails, and it could go one step further and actually understand what you need at this point in time and could prioritize you and even notify you through multiple channels if you receive outreach from a business pitching a solution that you desperately need. So I think it's a good thing. I think it's, like you said, it's going to separate the wheat from the chaff and ensure that those that are investing in high quality outreach are targeting the right people at the right time with the right message are getting results. I think what we'll see is that long tail distribution become even more emphatic, right? Where the top 5% are getting all the results, are getting all the replies because they are the ones that are putting in the effort and actually investing in the data and the tools to craft outreach to the right people with the right message. Whilst the 95% that are still adopting bad practices, are still doing the whole kind of spray and pray, low quality messaging, that is just not going to work. And that is just going to be a total exercise in futility, right? Because these AI spam filters, these AI agents that are embedded into your business, into your email infrastructure, are just becoming so much more sophisticated now. And those messages probably won't end up in your spam. They might just get automatically deleted if they very clearly are irrelevant or low quality.
Yeah. What about data as well? We're talking about the messaging and using AI to write these emails. Like one of the ways that you can be more targeted is through getting higher quality data. And I feel at the moment we're sort of going through a bit of a revolution with that as well, because primarily everybody would be using the same prospects. People would go to a platform like Apollo, which is a B2B database, which is updated. You grab your list from there. Increasingly, I feel like people are using AI to go directly to the source to find prospects. I know when we're doing outreach for AI to the world, increasingly, rather than using Apollo, just using a simple web search within Claude to go and look on the internet for data, and then really able to hone it and target it to go into the website and find pieces of data as well.
Yeah, I think that it's inevitable you will be able to build a campaign end to end at the push of a button. We're actually in the process of building these workflows now where our GTM engineers have a menu of campaign strategies. They select a strategy, they select the persona they're targeting, a founder or sales director, and we automatically find the leads, find the data, scrape the leads, import into Clay, get the data to enrich those leads, craft the outreach message, deploy the campaign, all at the push of a button. It's quite a serious operational project. We're right in the midst of it right now. But yeah, I mean, one of the great things about AI is it is a technology that is driving both quantity and quality, and that is a duality in life where you generally have to sacrifice one for the other, right? But with AI, you buy back so much time, talking in the context of sales, you buy back so much time to do what you do best, which is speaking to prospects, engaging buyers, because now you can automate the process of finding leads, getting data, building campaigns, writing emails, follow-up, scheduling meetings, summarizing meetings, establishing next steps, building proposals, entering data into your CRM. All of that can be automated. So you can just focus on speaking to prospects. You can have many more conversations, more quantity, but also much better quality conversations because you have so much more data at your fingertips to really personalize your outreach, your emails, your sales meetings, your proposals, which is super cool.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing. We should probably clarify as well and just talk a little bit about this, that in a sales company we have an SDR, right, which is the sort of the bottom of the rung. Am I right in saying
Yeah,
that? A
yeah.
sales development
Representative,
representative.
correct.
Ah, see,
You got it.
got it. They would usually do all of this, right? So they would manually research the leads. They'd think of the email to write to them. They would do the prospecting and close the call, and then it would be the person above them, the account executive, that
Yeah.
would do the demo and would close the call, and that would be how the workflow would go. And so your 5 SDRs were limited by the amount of research that they could do in one day. And so maybe you'd only have a handful of calls that came off the back of that, right? And then they would close. Now we're sort of moving away from that, and you can have somebody, you guys call them GTM engineers, and that's one of the terms that
Buzzword
people,
today.
the buzzword today, the go-to market engineer is essentially somebody that does what you guys do, which is send a whole bunch of cold emails that have been generated by AI and does the research and closes those calls and sets up all these AI workflows. But the end result is that one of those guys can do 5-10 times more than what an
Yeah.
SDR could do.
Yeah, so traditionally, you have your team of SDRs, as you said, and your account execs. And the SDRs, the sales development representatives, are responsible for cold email, cold calling, cold LinkedIn DMs. Their job is to generate leads and book meetings for the account executive to close. And now, with the advent of AI and AI automation and this whole kind of proliferation in new sales tech and tools, you can do so much more with less. And the problem is that most sales organizations are still stuck in their old ways using outdated tech and are fulfilling a lot of these processes very manually. And what one GTM engineer can do generally translates to what 5 to 10 SDRs do, because SDRs still go out and they find their leads and they build their lead list. They go and find the email address. They then write their emails manually. Some teams, a lot of teams are still sending those emails manually, sending the follow-ups manually. And you can automate a lot of that process and actually drive better results through putting together better quality copy because you have more data. You can personalize every single outreach message using tools like Clay, which is the foundation of the GTM engineering, right? And what was I going to add to that? It's not just kind of cold email and cold LinkedIn DMs that they're doing, but they're just building workflows that are embedded throughout the entire sales process to drive the pipeline, drive leads. So yes, you've got all the top of funnel stuff with the campaigns, the outreach campaigns, but you're also building workflows to support the account execs to close, whether it's through follow-ups, post-meeting, pre-meeting emails, crafting really personalized proposals. So the modern structure for B2B sales orgs, or the highest performing sales organizations today, are structured with one or two GTM engineers and just a team of closers, where the GTM engineer's responsibility is to automate everything so that the AEs, the account execs, can just focus on closing. That is the goal, and that structure is now made possible through all these new tools.
Yeah. I'm really interested to know what you think. It's probably the one question that I wanna know the answer to from you, which is, where do you think this space is going to be in 18 months' time? And do you think some of these tools will still exist, or do you think it's going to be even more automated than it is now?
Good question. It's difficult to answer because the change is so radical. Like 2 years ago, I would have never predicted what happened over the last 2 years in terms of tools like Clay enabling hyper personalization at scale, enabling you to just do so many cool things. What I think the landscape will look like 18 months down the line, I think sales teams are going to be much leaner because AI is the force multiplier. You can do so much more with less. I think that the teams that perform the best are the ones that really prioritize implementing the best tools and tools like Clay, rather than just throw headcount at the problem, which is what traditionally you do. If you need growth, you hire people. And I believe that there are universal principles to sales that will always be true. It's providing value will drive cooperation, drive reciprocal engagement. Being super personalized drives trust. And the sales organization that continue to leverage both of those levers will thrive. And you can now do that through AI and automation. You can use AI to gather all the data that you need on your buyers so you can personalize your approach. You've got to build the systems to enable that. And you can provide value. You can provide value through your actual cold outreach, right? Now, so one of the strategies that we deploy internally to grow our business, but also for our clients, is actually value-driven campaigns. So, for example, we sell cold email services. What we can do is target you. We can identify your case studies on your website. We can identify lookalike companies that seem similar to your ICP, to your current case studies. We can find the buyers at that company. We can find their email address, and we can even craft the outreach message that we would send if we were in your shoes, and we can package that in a cold email. So we can send you an email that you can genuinely get value from at scale. We can do that to thousands, tens of thousands of prospects in one campaign. So the sales organizations that will thrive are the ones that continue to personalize and continue to provide value and use tech to really underpin both those levers.
Yeah, I love that idea. So I think what's really interesting is the way that you frame it, is that it's the sales expertise that you have that's never going to go away. It doesn't matter how far the tech changes, you're just going to use it to enable you to do what you do a better scale. And so when you start to think about things like the model context protocol, we've talked about this earlier.
Yeah,
So
you need to tell me about that. You need to enlighten me.
Yeah, I will enlighten you.
Come on.
Yeah. The model
I
context.
hear it everywhere. My LinkedIn feed is just polluted with posts regarding MCP.
So the people want to sort of overcomplicate it. It's not that complicated. The model context protocol is essentially an open source, so it's permissionless, way of connecting tools with Claude, specifically the desktop app, because they have to be wired into
Okay, and
to the
just to
Android.
clarify,
Yeah.
this is a unique feature to Claude right now, GPT.
Initially, it was, and now OpenAI have said they're going to adopt it as well. So I don't know if you know HTTP, which is the hypertext type protocol, which is like an open source protocol that became standardized and adopted for essentially doing API requests and on the sort of on the internet. Um, MCP is like a similar thing. So it started off as Anthropic's own sort of vehicle, and then it became, now OpenAI have adopted it as well. So it's sort of almost become standardized.
Hmm.
And so what it allows you to do is you can go away and you can build a server for any tool. So any tool doesn't just it's easier if you have an API. So this is obviously a way of connecting tools together with an API, but you don't necessarily have to have one. And so you can build it and then put it out as a server. So anyone can build them. You don't need permission from the tool itself to be able to build these. And so it's accelerated the growth of tools being able to connect with Claude. So, for instance, I have a Notion connected to Claude, so I can say, okay, I want you to, search. In your case, go on the internet, search for 100 leads. Okay, bring them back, put them in a table. Now I want you to organize these and send them to Notion. For HubSpot, you could do this. You could say, okay, want you to do all this data, and then I want you to send it to HubSpot. If you wanted Claude to write you some social media posts, and you'd set it all up and prompted it the right way, get them to write them, and then it can send them and organize them for you in Notion. So because it's not just like you're waiting on these tools to integrate with Claude, anyone can make them. It's sort of accelerated the growth. So there's a whole library now of integrations essentially. And so you need to know a little bit of coding to be able to set it up. You need to sort of configure your Claude in the right way and open it up and put some code into it. You need to do a little bit of cloning some libraries from GitHub. But if you can sort of overcome that barrier, then what it means is you can do a lot of the things that you could do with Clay directly from Claude. And so what it is starting to mean is that eventually you won't necessarily need a set of tools. You won't need SaaS tools because you won't need to download them as programs. You'll just integrate them directly into Claude, and perhaps we'll reach a point where we have an LLM first operating system. So when you load up your computer, rather than seeing a desktop and a whole bunch of icons and things you have to click on, you're just presented with a chatbot that asks you what to do.
Yeah, that's super cool. I think that's inevitable, right?
Yeah.
So my understanding is Claude through this MCP
Yeah.
technology,
MCP, yeah.
it allows you to just integrate all the other tools on your desktop, on your laptop, and leverage them through Claude just through using natural language.
Yeah.
You don't need to build any complex integrations or API stuff, and it's all super easy to do with just natural
And
language.
not just tools on your desktop, any tool. So I think Appify has an MCP integration, so you can go and say, okay, call this actor, and then go and
Right.
search Google Maps.
So the tool you're integrating with needs an MCP
It needs
functionality
somebody
as
to,
well,
it needs somebody to build
or
it,
just an API?
but they are serverless. So what that means is once somebody has gone away and built it, so remember anyone can build it. You don't need to be they're permissionless, so you don't need the permission of the company. You don't need to approach the company and say, I'd like an MCP server, and wait for them to build it. So long as that company has an API, somebody can build it.
Right, okay,
Once
so
they've
all they need
built
is an
it,
API,
they
yeah.
can deploy it on GitHub in the server, and anybody can take that code and use it for themselves.
I see.
Yeah.
Wow. So what are the use cases for you so far,
For
assuming
you've
been
me,
diving into
so
this?
I integrated Claude with a web search provider before Claude had access to the web. So I've had that since it's been out since November. So for the last 6 months, my Claude has been able to access the internet, and I guess a lot of other people weren't able to have that Notion. So I have a specific Claude set up for fitness. So it has all my stats in it. It has the menus of Motion, of Dispensary, of all the restaurants where I eat, and my latest in-body scan. and so it's like a very specific project to me. So it can write me a workout program, and as I'm doing it, I can log what I've done. I can obviously take pictures of some of the equipment that I've used, and when I'm done with it, I can say, okay, now I want you to summarize, everything I've eaten today, my workout, and organize it in my Notion table with the right date, and it will do that for me.
That's insane.
So,
yeah.
yeah.
I remember listening to Mark Zuckerberg in a podcast, I think it was Lex Friedman, and he was talking about how most people assume that AI is going to be this kind of higher power, this one centralized power. But in reality, what we're going to have is individualized AI, like personal AI, where every single human being has their own AI agent that is their friend, their mentor, their coach, their partner. It's going to get pretty extreme. And I just thought that was quite an interesting concept that I remember listening to just a couple of years ago, and now that's starting to come into fruition.
Yeah, I really think that's the way that we're going, and you can set up a number of these in the way that however you want. So you could set up one for cold email that goes away and does the research, and then sends that data on to whatever database that you have, and does the web scraping and things directly from it. So all you have to do is ask. And obviously you could take it one step even further than that. So you could just speak with it if you want to. You could use something like Super Whisperer, which is where you can essentially chat, and then it will just turn it into text and send it into the LLM.
Yeah,
So,
that's, I mean, we're going a little off piece here, but that's a strategy I learned from you. I remember quite a few months ago now, you were talking about your approach to building up a big bank of information about you and your story that you can then repurpose into LinkedIn content, LinkedIn posts. And it worked really well. I basically ran an interview with GPT using all audio. And I obviously prompted at the start and said to GPT, we're going to run an interview. I want you to ask me really personal questions that are going to surface information that is going to be compelling for LinkedIn posts. And so we ran like just a 30-minute interview. There were times where it stopped and it was a little jarring, but you just get into the flow. And you can then offload all your learnings, your wins, your losses, your journey, and then export that transcript onto a Google Doc, and then use that Google Doc to build a Claude project or a custom ChatGPT, and repurpose LinkedIn posts or any kind of content from that.
Yeah, indeed, this podcast will probably be getting a transcript from this.
Good shout. Yeah, I hadn't thought of that.
Yeah.
So I was going to ask you, I was on the phone to a friend the other day, and he was telling me that he doesn't use much AI. And I suspect that's the case for most people today, is they might dabble with ChatGPT either for personal entertainment or perhaps to write an email every now and again. But I think for most people, it's not something that is a critical component of their day-to-day workflows. And he was curious to understand where he could start, how exactly he could use it. I know this is a very broad question and it's very subjective, but where would you suggest people start when it comes to learning how to embed AI into their day-to-day life?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that's probably one of the number one questions I get asked. People are overwhelmed by what they feel is the complexity of it, not helped by certain LinkedIn gurus telling them AI is either going to take all over the world or that they need 200 different tech stacks to...
Definitely not me.
So what I would say to people is you try not to be overwhelmed by it. I think the takeaways that I would say to people is, first of all, to understand the technology, and in very basic, broad terms, this isn't a sentient robot that's going to take everything over. I mean, yesterday I was listening to Tim Dillon and Joe Rogan on their podcast before I went to bed, thinking this would be, nice to fall to sleep to. And they were talking about how they thought, Tim Dillon was going on about how they thought that, maybe the only real purpose of humans existing was to build this AI super intelligence, so that we're just these basically vassals for aliens that have infiltrated us to force us to build AI. And I thought, this belies so little
nice
of what the
soothing
nice soothing thing to listen to before you go to bed. Yeah. We're
Brilliant.
just these vassals for producing it. But it belies so little of their understanding of what the technology is, which is it isn't a sentient robot. It's just inputs equals outputs. You put in some information, and then essentially it compares that to all the information, which is most of the available information that it has from the internet. It looks at it and then predicts what it thinks is going to come next, what it thinks is the most likely outcome, and that's all it's doing. So it's not sentient, it's not thinking for itself. And I think, first of all, if you can understand that, that can, number one, take away some of the fear. You can say, okay, that's the fear. And two, it can revolutionize the way that you interact with this technology. So if we imagine that all it's trying to do is predict in the best possible way what you want and serve that up and give that to you. And that's one of the reasons why, if you ask an LLM a leading question, and you think, "Am I right about this?" It's probably going to say, "Yes, you are." It's going to tell you what it thinks you want to hear. It's predicting what you think the answer is. It can take away a lot of your fear, but it can also help you understand that you need to give the LLM proper examples of what it is that you want and enough information. And so I'd say where most people go wrong is that they just say, "ChatGPT, write me this, give me this." Well, it cannot predict what you want if you haven't given it enough information. It's just going to go away into all of the available information it has on the internet and then try to figure out what you want. So the first thing to do is to really think about what it is that you actually want. What would be a good outcome for you? What's a good output? And then reverse engineer that, and what are the inputs you need to give it? In other words, if you, like me, are building a fitness application to help you, I thought very hard about what information does it need, and I thought it's probably going to want my in-body scan, because obviously that's going to tell it very precisely where I'm at on my journey. And if you can give it two, then it can see a comparison and it can see what you're doing. So if it can see two in-body scans, it can see what I'm doing every single day in terms of the calories that I'm eating, in terms of the my fitness workout. Like, all of that is hugely valuable sort of contextual information. But on top of that, if I can also give it an example of what I want. So, like, what do I want you to actually give me? Do I want you to give me a nice, friendly, "Oh, everything will be okay"? Do I want it to give me an output that's like that? That guy Andy Elliott. I'm sure you know who he
Of
is, right?
course.
Just he's a
Big up, Andy
big
Elliott.
yes,
Big up.
sales absolute mad guru to tell you,
Quite
get out
chilled
of
out,
bed.
laid
Yeah,
back guy.
yeah, of
Easy
course,
going.
right. Or do I want, you need to tell it what kind of output you want and what kind of style you want. That's where I would say people to start. Is it's all about the information that you give it. It can only produce an output on the information
Exactly.
that you give it. And
Shit in,
so,
shit out
yeah,
kind of thing. You need to
exactly.
ensure that,
Yeah.
yeah, no, that's really useful, because I think that's one part of the equation that people really underestimate. Like, if you want to get a lot of value from ChatGPT, you have to ensure the inputs are good quality as well, right? And it's not something that I think people give much thought to. It's like you go onto GPT and you mindlessly just enter what information you need, but actually there is a science behind prompting, and this is something that I'm becoming a lot more deliberate with at the moment. And so my understanding of the ideal framework, and I'd love your thoughts on this, is that when it comes to crafting your prompt, you want to specify the role. So it's like, you are a cold email expert with 30 years of experience. Then specify the task. I want you to write a cold email based on this context. I'm a marketing agency. I'm targeting consumer brands in the UK. And here's an example of an output. Are those the three key components? Is there anything I'm missing there? Is that the best way to arrange it? I suspect the next step you can do is actually ask GPT, is this prompt optimized, to help you refine it? What are your thoughts on that?
So first of all, there's two things. I'm going to add a little bit of complexity to this. I hope I
Hit
don't
me.
confuse people. Claude and ChatGPT work in different ways. So when you were speaking to Claude, you can use XML tags. They're those kind of little, like, brackets,
Yeah.
not brackets. They're like
These ones.
these ones.
Yeah, whatever they're called.
Whatever they're
What are
called.
they called, guys?
You put them like that together, and you say task, do this thing, and then you just list out what you want to do. You treat it almost like a military soldier. That's how I like to
So
think
you're
about
doing
it.
this in the prompt.
In the prompt, yeah.
Okay, this is the
You
first thing that you
yeah,
would
you
do.
could say task, do these things, relevant context, and you can break it down like that on Claude. Claude acts much more like a coder or instructing someone in the military. ChatGPT is the one that acts more like where you need to give it a role and say, I want you to act in this way. So there's a little bit of nuance and a little bit difference between the way that you would prompt Claude and the way you'd prompt ChatGPT.
That's the hallmark of a true AI expert, when you're actually tailoring your approach based on the LLM.
Yeah. And and so everything you said is absolutely right. The most important things are you give it a very clear set of instructions about what it is you want to do. You give it examples about what you would like it to produce, and you give it enough contextual information as well. But absolutely, that's the main way to think about it as well. Some resources that you can utilize if you want to really nail your prompt is
Harry's course.
yeah, of
Check it
course,
out.
yeah. Also, Anthropic has their own prompt like rewriting software. So that if you go into their developer
Seen that.
console, you can write what you want in your own words in natural language, and it's going to basically convert that and change that into a prompt for you. So that's always useful if you're prompting Claude. And then ChatGPT, I think what they do is they probably are rewriting your prompt in the back end as well. So whatever you write it, they will go away and improve it if you're using ChatGPT to bring it back to you as well. Actually, so yeah.
So they'll do that automatically. You'll write your prompt, and then they'll actually like rearrange that prompt on the back end, and then generate the output.
Yeah, not in the developer console. I believe only in ChatGPT. So if you build something
Unbeknownst
out
to you.
unbeknownst to you, they will sort of improve it.
Cool.
Which to make it better so that it gets the output that you want. Yeah.
Cool. And I'm gonna fire the question you asked me right back at you in regards to AI, the future.
I know what you're gonna ask me. Yeah.
Where do you think we'll be 12, 24 months down the line? Probably
that's a fascinating question. I think there is a growing gap between people who are using AI and people who are not using it. And it's only getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So the technology is like a runaway train. It's like all these new things are coming out: model context, protocol, all these things with AI agents. And I don't want to say people are being left behind, but that gap is growing bigger and bigger and bigger. And I think that's only going to grow over the next 12 to 18 months. So I think we're going to see a lot of changes. I think the very top people are going to be using AI, and they're going to be doing more work on top of that. Ultimately, where I think this is gonna go, people keep saying AI is going to take people's jobs, AI is going to take everything over. I don't agree with that at all. I think we're just gonna it's just gonna make us go further. So I think increasingly, I heard Elon talking about this, where how is what he's doing at SpaceX going to be improved by LLMs. Zuck is talking about taking Llama 4, which is Meta's open source LLM, to the ISS, the International Space Station, so that they can have access to it on there because it's locally and open source. So how is it going to? So it's going to help us, build better rockets, which will help us accelerate the space race. That's one thing that it's going to do. We're already seeing it being implemented in the NEOM project, the line in Saudi Arabia. Like they're trying to build an entire city that's walkable, and all the functions like air conditioners and any data point is gobbled up into the LLM, so that the LLM can sort of basically better moderate the city, in terms of its environmental impact, in terms of its just livability for people, so that it can correctly direct people, how long a journey is going to take in terms of walking or their car. So I think all of that is going to accelerate, and I think it's just going to push us to do more. Like the role GTM engineer didn't exist 18 months ago, and now that it does, that's like a new job that's been created, you could say. Like prompt engineer is a new role that's going to be coming out. GPT just put out, OpenAI just released their new image generator as an API. So
Hmm.
I've already seen
I've
Josh
seen that
Whitfield
post. I
talking. Yeah,
saved it.
yeah,
I
yeah,
shared it
yeah,
with Felix.
yeah. So yeah, don't be sending any cold emails with those action figures. I think you're about 2 weeks away from people's inboxes just being
That's the
absolutely
perfect example
yeah,
of a
exactly, yeah,
strategy becoming saturated,
yeah,
and that inevitably will
yeah.
become saturated quickly.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So you've seen all these new roles appear, but they're all new roles where you need to understand AI to be able to do them. So again, obviously the SDR role is the perfect example of that, where an SDR is going to become basically redundant, but that doesn't mean that that person has lost their job. If that person went away and retrained and learned about AI, then they
And
could
completed
become
our
yeah,
courses.
of course, yeah, they could become a GTM engineer, right? And so then that's a whole new job. And so every industry is going to go through that transformation where the technology comes around and the person is just going to be expected to do more. And I think us as a species, as a race, are going to do more in terms of science and technology. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's the thing is like I run a lead generation
Yeah.
agency. I love it. I'm a bit of a geek around all this go-to-market technology. Are we impacting society and driving humanity forward? Probably not. We're helping kind of companies generate leads. So I understand you have a much broader
Yeah.
understanding of AI. I'd love to hear any stories or examples or predictions on how AI is really positively impacting humanity,
Yeah.
particularly in the kind of health care sector. Because I'm thinking
Yeah.
Neuralink right now, one of Elon Musk's business, right? Neuralink is building the technology. I don't know how much AI is actually incorporated into this product, but it's an insane innovation where we are essentially making ourselves cyborgs, computerizing our brains. And Musk believes that it's going to help tackle, vision, eyesight disability. It's going to restore vision for blind people, restore mobility problems as well, restore cognitive function, all this kind of stuff. Yeah, I'd love to hear your thoughts on how AI is
Yeah,
impacting us on
man. I
that
mean, how
level.
long do we have? I mean, it's done so much already, and it's gonna do so much. I mean, I don't know if you heard of a company called DeepMind
Y-
and AlphaFold. We
Yeah.
actually have at the AI meetup at the moment somebody who used to work at DeepMind, so
Mm.
one of the most smartest people in the world here from Silicon Valley. I didn't work on this, but they have managed to map all of the I believe the proteins. I think is what it's called. I think it's AlphaFold was the name of it. So we'd only managed to map a certain number of proteins in the human body. Which are a fundamental building block of DNA, which is like our coding, essentially what makes us sort of unique. And from
How
like
the aliens have configured
right,
us,
yeah,
of
how the
course.
aliens have configured this, of course. So from 1960 until 2012, we'd only managed to do, I think, like a handful of a percent, maybe 2 or 3% of them. And it's a really, really time-consuming task to be able to do it. And then AI has just pretty much got us to 98, 99% within a few years with this AlphaFold project that's come out, which is obviously amazing and incredible that we have this much knowledge of about it. It's also being used in space
And
travel.
so just on that,
Yeah,
what
yeah,
outcomes do you think that might lead to?
yeah.
Because to me, that means nothing.
Yeah,
Forgive
yeah,
my ignorance, but
yeah. Um, Better medicines because you can tailor vaccines, you can tailor medicines to specific people because you have their entire genomes mapped. Better understanding of biology. Um, so a better understanding of just in general how we are put together, which just transforms sort of all of science. Um, I suppose cloning as well. If you wanted to clone another human being, or you wanted to clone a particular part of a human being, for transplants, I guess I could see it having an impact there. So it really opens the door for quite a lot of um, all kinds of things. Medicines becoming unique and specialized to that one person. I don't want to speak too much about it because I'm not a scientist and I'm not a specialist, so people are welcome to correct me. But yeah,
But I
it's
mean,
huge.
yeah,
Yeah.
AI is just getting embedded into every single industry, so you can't keep a pulse on everything.
No.
Like, I think it's useful
Yeah.
to have just a high level overview of
Yeah.
everything that's going on across the
Sure.
board.
That's one thing. Some other things I could
So
talk
you
to
mentioned
are
space.
space. Yeah. Right. So
That's fascinating. Let's
yeah.
talk about that.
Yeah. Let's talk about that. We've got the James Webb Space Telescope. Do you know what this is?
Yeah, yeah,
Right. So
mad.
it's we sent it up. I think maybe 18 months ago, a year ago. I put it online, and it is basically able to map, the basically the wider, beyond the solar system and the wider universe in a way that the Hubble telescope is not able to, because it uses infrared light essentially. Um, so it can determine from sort of light, um, exoplanets. These are planets that orbit other suns. So it can look at black holes. It sent back the first ever picture of a black hole. And so if we put AI on top of that, before you'd have to have somebody like look at all these images and look and sort of look for certain things and look for discrepancies, because it's mapping the sky, I believe, taking one picture, and then a few seconds later it's taking another picture, or maybe a week later it's taking another picture to compare that space in the sky to see what's changed. And so an AI can do that, and it can accelerate our understanding of space
Mm.
rapidly, and how many planets there are, and if there are any exoplanets that might contain other life forms. Whereas previously, we'd only managed to map maybe a handful of exoplanets that were nearby in the other solar systems that were nearby, and now we can start to get a sense of how many planets orbit other stars, which is really fascinating and really
Mm.
cool, and probably a whole host of other stuff that I not even aware of.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and one of the recent
yeah,
breakthroughs is that we discovered a planet, I think 100 light years
yeah.
away, that contains water and potentially molecules that indicate signs of life
Yeah,
and organisms. You come across
I
that?
saw that. I haven't looked too deeply into it, but I saw that. Yeah, they're finding these exoplanets all the time. So
Yeah,
yeah,
it's insane.
yeah. See, what we can do is we can detect these from the light that they send
Yeah,
back, right? But we sort of we can't necessarily know for sure, in that we can't obviously send a rocket there to go and check like we can to Mars. We're a long way from being able to do
Elon better
that.
get his skates on.
Yeah, right. Yeah, yeah. So yeah, there's the space. It's having huge impact. Also on history as well, it's having huge impact. So, a recent story that really caught my attention was that they sent a bunch of cameras down to the Titanic. So, to set the
Yes, I
scene,
saw
right? The
this.
Titanic sank all those years ago, but it's so deep and so far under the ocean, and the two components of it are so far apart. You can't ever shine a light on it to be able to see the entire thing from a submarine, because it's so deep and it's so dark and it's so big. So we sent these cameras down to basically create a 3D model of the Titanic, which we'd not been able to obviously do before. So for the first time, we can see it in its entirety. And so from this 3D model, we've also been able to start looking at all kinds of things, which AI is helping us with. So we've looked at the sort of the space between the bow and the stern, where a lot of the debris and a lot of the wreckage is, and we found this shark's tooth belonged to, I think it's called a megalodon, like a prehistoric shark, and it's all gold, and it obviously belonged to somebody on the ship. So they've actually found out who that belonged to, and they used AI to try to find out who that belonged to. And first of all, what they did was they scanned images of all the passengers of getting aboard the Titanic with the black and white footage to look for if that anyone was wearing that necklace, and then they actually found him through the insurance claims. So they scanned all the insurance claims of the people who died and survivors, and that's how they found that it belonged to. I think his name was Colonel Weir or someone. So he lived in America and he was traveling back to the UK. So that they found out. They've also been able to verify the story of somebody who said that the iceberg, that part of it hit her, ice went through her window or something, or through an open porthole. And the person who said that account actually survived the Titanic. And so now they've got this model, they're able to actually find her window and sort of basically verify that that story was true. And so what that does is it enables you to they measured where that porthole actually was, and so you can understand where the iceberg actually would have hit the Titanic and how big it was, and from that they've been able to theorize the actual damage that was done. Because if you think about it, the Titanic is sank and part of it is under the seabed, so we can't see it even with that 3D model. So we can't actually see where the damage was done from the iceberg, but we can sort of reverse engineer from that story of like, okay, well, hit this many meters up. So all kinds of
That's insane.
yeah.
So in summary, AI is accelerating our quest for knowledge, whether it's through substantiating historical stories or driving our exploration into space to ascertain the meaning of life and what the hell we're doing here.
And as a former journalist as well, like when all those new JFK files came out, they were literally just dumped on the internet. I don't know if you saw that. It was like 10,000 pages. Trump said, okay, you've got to unredact and release the rest of the JFK files, and they put them out, but literally just as individual PDF documents on or image documents, sorry, on a government website. And so usually what would happen with a large dump like that is you'd have to wait for journalists to actually sit there and go through them, and they would divide those files up between themselves, and they'd all have to obviously be working on that story and have some kind of expertise and insight into that story, and then you'd see like a drip feed of different stories come out. And so people on X crowdsourced all these images and created a special chatbot, made what we call a RAG, which is where you essentially chunk them all up into small components and put them into a database, and made a chatbot and just put it out there. So everybody on X could ask, okay, do they tell me anything about what really happened? Was JFK murdered by the CIA? And it could just summarize all of what was in the documents and then point back to the relevant document to help them answer their questions.
That's why it's so useful, because it makes learning so efficient. So I have this workflow that I've built internally for myself that I've been using for a long time, that I use whenever I want to learn a new skill. And what I do is I go to YouTube, I identify a handful of videos, the latest videos that educate me on the specific skill. So it's like, okay, teach me how to use meta ads, right? And I will copy the URLs from all those YouTube videos. I'll paste them into a Slack channel that I've created to just trigger the automation. And when I paste the URL, it triggers the automation to then scrape the transcript from those videos, use GPT to analyze all that information, digest all that information, and then distill all the key insights, put it onto a Google Doc, store that in actually a Google spreadsheet. So I've got all these Google Docs centralized, and then I can just read through the summaries from these YouTube videos and upskill. And I think it goes back to what you're saying, how there's a growing gap between adoption and like awareness of AI. There's some people that are just getting left behind and others that are really taking advantage of it. And I think that is also indicative of what's happening in society generally in the West at the moment. We're in this age of abundance. I'm going a little bit off piece here, but we're in this age of abundance now where you can get most of what you want pretty effortlessly at the push of a button, right? Whether it's food, entertainment, Netflix, video games, social media. And that is kind of the destructive side of this age of abundance. The constructive side is that we now have access to all this information. Information has become democratized, right? You think 30 years ago, you had to go to a library, hope that the information you're looking for was there, find the book, read through the book, take it home. That is a lengthy process. That's an inefficient process. And, to buy an encyclopedia in the 90s cost you $3,000, right? Now you can get all that information for free. And I think what's going to happen in society is...
Is that really true?
Yeah. And even more given how that currency is appreciated, right? So, and, those that gravitate towards the destructive stuff are going to become increasingly isolated from society, whilst those that want to take full advantage of the fact that you can get whatever you need, get the information you need at the push of a button are going to be propelled in an entirely new direction. So we'll have half of a society that's just sedated from all these channels that are consuming us, and then equally those that are keeping ahead by taking advantage of all this information at our fingertips.
And I do think the thing that differentiates that is having awareness and also implementing some kind of system. Because if you use all these free tools, if you just open YouTube, as I'm finding, then it will just destroy your brain because it will just serve you, in my case, those endless cop videos, where they have the body cams and they're going around arresting someone for
Is that
stealing
your
2 grand.
typical rabbit hole, is
That's
it?
my rabbit hole.
I've always thought you can learn a lot from someone just from their YouTube recommended videos.
Yeah, well, there you go. Mine is all just body cam footage and I don't know, updates on what Philip Schofield's up to now, or some nonsense like that. So yeah, I mean, you will just be taken down that rabbit hole. So I think it's really important to be mindful and to have a system set up for knowledge capture, which is, I think, something we've talked about a lot before. A tool called Readwise is really good, or building your own tool, or at the very least setting some kind of limits on how often you receive information. I mean, my worst a bad habit, as a former journalist, is in the morning getting up and being like, let me just check all the papers, the Guardian, the Telegraph, and the Times, and I don't really need access to all of that information or some tittle tattle about whatever is going on in UK politics. It's not really helpful, and I always justify it to myself like, oh, well, want to make sure there's not a world war that started or all of this. But you don't really need access to that. You'd be much better off blocking all those sites and, as you said, like setting up a workflow. So you get all of these long form videos that people put out on YouTube about how you become an expert at using Facebook Meta ads, and then put that into a ChatGPT so you can chat with it and have it done. Talk about it in your own language.
Yeah, you can just build the workflows yourself to just curate the information that you want to see, right? So that's something that you can incorporate into your package because you're obviously offering quite a comprehensive service where you're helping companies embed AI across the board, whereas we're just helping them embed AI in their go-to-market strategy, right? Whereas you could help founders keep a pulse on what their competitors are doing, what's happening in their industry, or just build the workflows to provide them with the news they want generally, right? That's a valuable workflow. And yeah, that's just another cool thing about AI.
Yeah. But why don't we talk about your relationship with Felix and how you actually set up Stack Optimise? I think that's quite interesting.
Yeah, sure. So we launched the business a year and a half ago. Our background's both in B2B sales, both spent 6 or 7 years in B2B sales, scaling up from the SDR, the sales rep, to account executive, head of sales, across various tech startups and scale-ups in London. And we tested out lots of different ideas to try and launch something together and go all in on building a business. And they were ideas which deviated wildly from our expertise, which is B2B sales, and predictably didn't work. Food prep stuff, paid newsletters, automations for the hospitality industry, random, wacky, wild stuff. So we regrouped, hit the drawing board, realized that, hang on, we've both got 7 years in B2B sales. And at this point in time, AI was really blowing up. And so we just spoke to sales leaders, founders, talked about their sales process, and it became immediately apparent that there was this big disconnect between the value from the tech that they were currently employing in their sales process and the value they could be getting with all these new tools at their disposal. And so we committed to just embedding ourselves in the sales tech space and started posting content, all the latest tools, all the latest B2B growth strategies based off of all these tools. And we started to get traction super quickly because this was a super hot space. So our timing was perfect. We were very lucky with the timing. And from there, after just 3 or 4 months, we started to generate inbound leads, businesses approaching us, inquiring about our services, which were non-existent at the time, but you kind of wing it as you go. And we went from there. It's just snowballed from there, really.
What was it like stepping out of the sales space, which I imagine to some extent was quite conservative, especially if you're an employee, in that, as we've talked about, this is the org chart, and this is the way that you do things. It's the SDR that does the lead generation, and you're expected to do it manually. And I imagine there's quite a lot of oversight over how you actually do that, to going into a space where you're like, actually, we're telling all these organizations that they don't need any SDRs, they need to use these tools. I imagine that it must have been both exciting and both daunting to move out of a traditional structure to one where you're sort of starting to automate things and starting to actually push the boundaries and shift how things actually work.
Yeah. So we, from having these conversations and from the momentum that we generated just since we launched in that first initial spell, just really hammered home this hypothesis that our business is built on, which is sales today is about tools and the technical side of things rather than just you still need people, you still need good closers, but really the way things are going, the companies that have not necessarily the best people but the best processes will be the ones that thrive. So we've adapted our skill set from one of talking to one of using tools, right? And ever since we had this realization that this is the way things are going, we're just super bullish on it, and our whole business is built on this perspective. And so it's something that we live and die by right now. It's something we live and breathe. And yes, we speak to people that are a little hesitant and a little skeptical about all these new tools and their effectiveness, but I think the sentiment is generally that this is the way that things are going, and we're fortunate with our timing that we've been a real pioneer of that transition. I'm not sure if that addressed your question directly.
What like, I feel like some of the subtext of what you were saying is you don't necessarily need to be an amazing salesperson in maybe the way you needed to be 20 years ago to use these tools. You can still be effective even if you're not a classic salesperson. Would you say that's fair?
Yeah, so it's all kind of semantics. Strictly speaking, what we're doing is not sales, it's actually marketing. We're
I
generating.
saw you put a post about this the other day. It's quite
Yeah,
interesting.
it is effectively marketing. And I guess it's positioned as a sales service because we position ourselves as an alternative to the SDR, the sales development rep. But arguably, a sales development representative is not really a salesman. They are just generating leads. They're cold calling. It's just like running ads, right? The purpose is to generate leads, to book in the meetings for the account exec to close. Sales is about closing. It's about generating sales. What generates sales is closing. So we are, in an essence, marketing is what we're doing. And in terms of the skill set, they are very different, right? It's like we're building processes, we're building workflows, whereas closing is all about building relationships and speaking. And the challenge for us is finding people that embody both those skill sets. You were one of the diamonds that did, right?
Yeah.
Is that they are two diverse skill sets, right? One is about building things and processes, and the other is about interpersonal connection. And generally, people are hardwired for one or the other. I mean, it's not always so binary, but generally people lean towards one or the other. And so you want to find those hybrid people, people that have that hybrid skill set, that know how to deal with clients and build relationships, but also build out the processes to fulfill the service as well. So that's one of our biggest challenges as a business, is finding good people to do both those things.
I can see that.
And sorry, that's why the GTM engineer role is one that is so valuable for that reason.
Yeah, I think it's really fascinating. You just park it in marketing rather than sales, and I wonder what that says about the future of sales per se within these organizations, if we're going to put a label on it. I mean, as you said, in some ways it's semantics, but in some ways, might it mean, as you say, that sales just becomes about closing, and you have a more of a dividing line between what are marketing operations and people who are just on the phone all day, just taking calls?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that is how I envision things going, right? You will have a very clear distinctive roles within your growth department, right? You will have people that are responsible for generating the leads, essentially enabling the closer. That's the way I see it. It's not just generating leads, but it's fulfilling the processes to enable the closer to spend all their time speaking to prospects, speaking to buyers, building relationships. That is what they do best. That's all they should be doing. You should be optimizing your structure to enable that. So one element of that is providing a consistent stream of leads for the account exec and filling up their calendar with meetings. But it's also doing things like carrying out the account research, carrying out the meeting summaries, crafting the follow-up emails post-meeting. So just in a few clicks, they can fulfill that entire process and get back to speaking to prospects physically, because that, like I said, is what they do best. That's their highest leverage task. That's the revenue generating task, right?